Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week, where the story's going next. Sarah Westwood. I'm here today with senior columnist Tim Carney. And Tim, you wrote a column this week about Governor Andrew Cuomo's decision to resign in New York. You know, some on the left were sort of touting that as an example of how the Democratic Party holds their own more accountable, potentially, than Republicans do. But your column is about how Democrats don't deserve any credit for Cuomo.
They don't deserve all that much credit. It was good. There were lots of politicians on the national level who told him he should step down. And then even more important, there were politicians on the state level who took steps to push him out. My problem was that they all waited until he was really vulnerable and wounded, and that specifically, even after the Attorney General's report came out documenting all this sexual impropriety, harassment, abuse by Cuomo, still a majority of Democrats, by a large margin in a poll, said they approved of Cuomo being the governor. And then you also had other Democrats come out afterwards and say, oh, well, here's this horrible, abusive story from 8 years ago that I've kept to myself until he resigned. Specifically, Valerie Jarrett had a story of Cuomo calling the White House, trying to get the White House to pressure a federal prosecutor to get off of an anti-corruption investigation in New York. So it's a total abuse of power, and we don't learn about it until after Cuomo steps down. This guy was not a different guy over the last 8 years, and Democrats stayed quiet about it. Those people don't deserve credit, they deserve blame.
You also wrote a column about how it was discovered that Congressman Ted Lieu's campaign donated more than $50,000 to Stanford University, and his son then attended Stanford University. So what's the potential ethics issue there?
Well, so there's lots of interesting questions here. First of all, a campaign donating to a university is odd for an active campaign. In other words, we often get the case where a member loses re-election or dies or retires, and their campaign gives away leftover money to charities or to colleges. I went and I looked, and this is the second largest donation on record from an active campaign to a university. Benny Thompson's campaign once gave over $100,000 to a small, historically black college that Benny Thompson graduated from. So Ted Lieu giving money to Stanford, not odd. A campaign giving money to a college, not odd. Ted Lieu's son, probably a very gifted student who deserved to get into Stanford, but Ted Lieu's campaign gave the second largest ever contribution from an active campaign to a university that I could find. That makes it worth looking into. I've asked Ted Lieu's office for comment. They haven't given me any yet.
And finally, as kids are heading back into the classroom for the fall, we're seeing battles at these school board meetings over mask mandates. Some Republican governors have moved to try to prevent school districts from having the ability to require face coverings in the classroom, and some schools are now trying to defy that. So what can we expect?
Well, there's tons of issues at play here. First of all, you have kind of state versus local. Historically, conservatives have sort of supported local control, but in Texas and Florida, it's Republican governors saying, no, you local governments can't mandate it. Then we've got questions of science. There's no science proving by any stretch of the imagination that kids need to wear masks in classroom. And over in Europe, there's tons of unmasked classrooms going on perfectly safe. It's almost a uniquely American thing to require these masks in a classroom. But then there's a fight even behind that where you still have teachers, unions, and others mobilizing to close or move to hybrid like we did last year, where students would be doing more remote learning. That fight is still in the background, but I think we can expect as August goes along, if cases continue to climb, there will be more pushes to push students towards remote learning.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Tim and the rest of the commentary team at WashingtonExaminer.com.